This technology uses satellites to send data and video feeds from the seafloor to us here at the University of Rhode Island and to your classrooms. So with that being said, I want to give you a little bit of a rundown on how this program is going to work. So you'll be able to ask questions to our expedition team that's on the research vessel Connecticut out in Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary. Joe, the Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants host, will be able to cue your classroom when I cue Joe that it is time for questions and answers. Our team is super eager to hear your questions. They can be anything about what marine creature did I just see? How did you get your career? Or anything that you're thinking about. So if you have a question come to mind, remember it so that you can ask the team when it's time for questions. With that being said, I also want to say that this program is specifically tailored towards marine technology. So you'll be able to learn a little bit more about how we explore the 80% of the ocean that is unmapped, unobserved, and unexplored. So we're going to take part in that today. With that, I want to cue the overview videos that you get a better feel for this expedition.
842 square miles, up to 600 feet deep, enough to submerge the Seattle Space Needle, the final resting place of hundreds of shipwrecks, and one of the top 10 whale-watching destinations in the world. Created in 1992, Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary lies 25 miles off the coast of Boston. It's home to a rich assortment of marine life, including Atlantic cod, haddock, flounder, bluefin tuna, and many species of whales, including the critically endangered North Atlantic right whale. And all this life attracts many visitors. Over 500,000 whale watchers visit the sanctuary each year. The crossroads of critical fishing grounds and shipping routes for centuries, Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary also contains vast numbers of shipwrecks, ranging from wooden sailing ships to modern fishing trawlers. These wrecks are both windows into the past and important habitats for marine life. Stellwagen Bank Sanctuary is one of 14 marine protected areas within the National Marine Sanctuary System, a network encompassing more than 600,000 square miles of underwater parks. Managed by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the sanctuaries promote responsible, sustainable use of ocean and Great Lakes resources. They also serve to connect people to the ocean so they can better understand its critical roles in climate, weather, and human health. To foster that connection, NOAA awarded funding to Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, often referred to as WHOI, to conduct state-of-the-art research. Based on nearby Cape Cod, WHOI is the world's oldest and largest nonprofit ocean research and education institution. Using tools and technologies pioneered at Woods Hole, we can bring live dives, research, and exploration over the internet in real time to you.
All right, now that you've seen a little bit more about the expedition, I want to say that we're going to head to the research vessel Connecticut to talk to the Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary and Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution staff and researchers who are conducting the expedition. But before that, I want to turn to Joe to check in with you all and make sure that he can hear you. So we're 400 feet above the Portland when we're on the research vessel Connecticut. Do you guys have an idea of how we can explore 400 feet below the sea? And I see all these smiling faces and waving. Hello.
All right. Thanks so much, Hannah. This is awesome so far. We've got a great group of classrooms joining us from different places across North America. But let's turn on a mic and let's see if one of those classes has an idea for us how you guys are exploring so deep in the ocean. So let's see. Let's go to Mrs. Harrison's class. Let me turn their microphone on. How are we doing, Miss Harrison's class? Good. All right. Who's got an idea how they're exploring so deep beneath the ocean?
All right, we are going to head to the research vessel Connecticut to talk to our cinematographer Evan Kovacs, and he's on board the Connecticut and was also the co-designer of the ROV. Hey, Evan.
Hey, Hannah, how are you guys doing?
We're great.
Thank you. Excellent, excellent. We're at a fun time here. We just got to the bottom a couple of minutes ago. We are sitting over the wreck. The wreck's about 450 feet of water, and we have our robot Pixel on the bottom. So Pixel is it's a remotely operated vehicle, which you guys probably know about. And if you don't, you will learn more soon. But Mike and I were the co-designers along with a few other guys, and we wanted to build an ROV that we didn't have to constantly add cameras to, add extra lights to, because normally that's what would happen. We'd have to add extra cameras, extra lights, and it never really performed the way we wanted. So we designed Pixel to carry all sorts of cinematography cameras, sensors, and what we're doing on this cruise is doing video surveys and still surveys. We're going to be collecting samples and things like that. Right now, because we're on the bottom and we don't have things like GPS, well, we have something that's similar to GPS. It's called USBL. So what Mike is doing right now is actually trying to get our position in relationship to the ship and the wreck. So Mike, I don't know. Oh, we have a little fish going by here. I don't know if you can tell them real quickly, just sort of what you're doing and why.
So on this particular trip, we're lucky, as Evan said, to have USBL. So it lets us know where the vehicle is in the water. So what we reference is the ship's GPS to an acoustic signal to our vehicle and where it's located. And right now, I don't know if the camera's looking at it, but on our screen, you could see that the vehicle is about 90 feet away to the northwest from the ship. And we're at about 465 feet below the ship, sitting just northwest of the wreck site. So we just came to the bottom. We've got something we believe is the anchor sitting right in front of the vehicle. And we're kind of just getting ready, making sure everything's working right and getting set up to start heading over and survey the site.
Awesome, thank you. I like one of the most difficult things about operating in the ocean is really knowing where you are, because if you can't see it easily, how are you going to get there? If you don't have GPS, which we're so used to nowadays, you need to find other ways to do it, and that's for us often with acoustics. The other thing that we often use, which we don't have on right now because we're at the wreck, is our sonar. And sonar lets us see through the dark, sometimes even as far out as 100 meters. So what we'll do now is I think we'll go to a little technology package, and you guys can learn a little bit more about what we're doing here, and then we'll come back and have another little talk.
Hey, Ryan. Question, because we can't hear this.
Technology
groups.
allows us
How
to
should I
explore
ask
places that
the
humans water. For this project, we're using a custom underwater robot named Pixel to film the shipwrecks and collect samples for our scientists. Pixel is a remotely operated vehicle, or ROV, equipped with 7
Well, it's going
cameras
back
and 2 samples.
to Evan anyways, right?
GPS
I can
works
come
on
to
the
them
surface,
after.
but it doesn't water.
30 seconds.
To find our way to the wreck, we use USBL, or ultra short baseline. This technology uses sound waves to figure out where Pixel is in relation to the wreck and our ship. In addition to USBL, we also use acoustic sonar to help us see through dark or murky waters.
Hey Joe, can you give us some audio really quick to confirm we can hear you?
Create a 3D model of the shipwreck,
How's it going, guys?
an important tool for scientists studying the wreck.
Okay, we got you. We're going to come back to you with questions soon.
Capture thousands of images and use sophisticated computer software to recreate the ship's geometry. By comparing a new model every few years, we can see how the wreck is collapsing naturally or being damaged by human activity over time. We're also collecting images to create virtual reality movies during this expedition, which we will process and share once ashore. VR is an incredible way to experience both the expedition and diving underwater without getting wet. It's also another way to put the eyes and minds of scientists, historians, and all of you right there on the wreck.
Cool. I hope you guys liked that little video. And so right now, Calvin Myers, who is the project archaeologist, has joined us. And I know Calvin is probably getting excited because we're sitting off the wreck, and I know he's itching to go. But one of the things about operating on shipwrecks, especially with a small vehicle like this, is that we have to be really careful of the currents. We built the vehicle to have a lot of a sort of cinematic punch, in the sense that we can carry all these cameras and sensors and whatnot. But even though it can carry all that stuff like a big ROV, it doesn't have the mass and the power. And so the benefit is we can get in close and we can get in tight and we can get shots that you can't get with a bigger vehicle. The downside is you have to be a little bit more careful that you don't come off the bottom and get blown into the net. So we're trying very carefully to figure out exactly where we are. Now, Calvin and I we spent some time out here over the summer with Mike and Kirsten. Right now we're sitting, I think, on the bow. And Calvin, are you excited to be back out here? And what are you hoping to see after we spent some time here during the summer?
Yes. A, yes. B, this right now. As Evan just alluded to, I kind of want to just turn my chair and say, let's go. One of the great things about maritime archaeology, what I like to say, it's where, history meets science. And so I get the best of both worlds. I get to go and unravel a mystery that's 450 feet underwater and explore the stories behind the people on board, as well as work with a great crew who is just amazing because, they're the reason we are able to get down there. The challenges of studying technology, and that's what the Portland was. It was a steamship. It was the cutting edge technology of its day, but it failed. If you can imagine your cell phones dying on you when you need to make that phone call, or your computer dying on you when you have to turn in that paper. Well, this is similar, but times 100. And on that fateful night in 1898, just 2 days after Thanksgiving, 193 people didn't get to go home. And so maritime archaeology, while we are able to use technology, is really taking that science and really understanding those last moments of the people on board. So there's quite a bit of responsibility to tell these lost stories, these stories that, while they could be written in a history book, it's really when we see the artifacts, when I'm looking right here at maybe the anchor, and you get that goosebumps of why is it there? Why is it not? Oh, it's basically a huge mystery of what's going on. So as an archaeologist, very grateful to be here, very excited to see what we can do. And with the technology that these guys have to actually create a 3D model and to bring it to you in the classroom, as well as learn more about it, because we don't have a complete picture yet.
That's one of the things that we're trying to do out here is build a 3D model of the entire shipwreck. And then what that helps us to do is kind of give it context and gives Calvin the ability to look at things as a whole and understand a site as a whole. And traditionally, archaeologists, they've done that by hand, and they've sketched them, they've used photographs, they've built mosaics. And in fact, when NOAA was out here in, I guess, 2002 or 2010, they built the mosaic. And that was a great tool for us to get to learn from. But one of the things was you could see the limitations of the technology that day. And so we're applying new technology, new imaging technology, especially in the hopes of building something big, not so much bigger and better, but just something a little bit more timely and intuitive.
What I'd compare it to is take a 3,000 piece puzzle box, shake it up, throw it in 400 feet, and then wear shades to try to piece it together. Well, for the first time, we're taking off those shades and we're trying to take each of those pieces. So we have some pieces, we kind of have the corners and the edges here or there, but we want to know what's in the middle, and it maybe solve why it actually sank.
Yeah, well, that's our hope. And Hannah, we'll give it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelvin and Evan, for that great overview. And those models are incredible. I'm excited to see those and see their use in classrooms as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe So Joe, can you gauge your group and see how many of the students have heard of the Portland or New England's Titanic before today's program?
All right, boys and girls, let's get a show of hands if any of you had ever heard of the Portland before. No, it looks like we're getting a few hands, maybe
Few
three or
hands?
four.
3 or 4. Awesome. So I'm going to turn it back over to the research vessel Connecticut, where we have Ben Haskell, who's the Deputy Superintendent of Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary, to provide us a little bit more on Portland's history and background. So Ben, there are about 3 or 4 students that think they've heard of the Portland before. Do you want to enlighten the rest of the classrooms on the Portland's history?
We'll do that, Hannah, and welcome everybody. It's a really exciting and historic day actually today, so thanks for joining us. It's been 16 years since I've last seen the wreck of the Portland, so I'm really excited to be here. I wanted to give you a little bit of history of the Portland, and beside me here is a beautiful model of the side paddle wheel steamer. And the wreck of the Portland is in fact historic because it's older than 50 years, but she's actually 121 years old because she sank in 1898. But let me tell you a little bit about the steamship itself. Again, it's a side paddle wheel steam.
All right. Looks like we lost a little bit of our connection with the research vessel Connecticut. So Joe, I can try to take a question from one of your classrooms.
Absolutely. Let's go for it. So we're going to visit first. We're going to go to North Palm Beach in Florida. Mr. LeVogue has some students hanging out. Let me get their microphone turned on for them. How are we doing, North Palm Beach?
Say hi. So listen, say your name and what's your question?
Hello, my name is Melissa, and I've been wondering, how many shipwrecks you guys ever found?
That's a great question coming from West Palm Beach. I am not sure how many shipwrecks they have found. I know that the man that was just on the screen, Ben Haskell, was involved in finding the Portland, the one that you were seeing the live footage of, about 16 years ago. So that's really exciting for his career. And I know that there's 2 other shipwrecks that we're going to be visiting with an ROV during this expedition. On Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to be on the shipwrecks, the Palmer and the Crary. So those are also within Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary, which is in Massachusetts Bay off the coast of Massachusetts. So there's 3 shipwrecks right there that we will be visiting with an ROV. I can take another question from one of your groups.
All right, absolutely. Let's take a trip. This time we're going to go to Oshawa, Ontario here in Canada with Mrs. Harrison's class. Let me get their microphone turned on. How are we doing, Oshawa?
Great. Okay. So, Charlotte, do you want to read your question?
Why are there so many shipwrecks?
So why are there so many shipwrecks?
Charlotte, that's a great question. So the question was, why are there so many shipwrecks? So was that your question?
Yeah.
Nodding.
Nod your heads, guys. That was your question.
Great. Awesome. So why are there so many shipwrecks? So it varies for different regions of the ocean and of Great Lakes and bodies of water. And it varies from different reasons too. So there's weather impacting shipwrecks. So tragedy strikes when there's treacherous conditions. So that could be big waves, a huge storm like the gale that took down the Portland, the wreck that you were able to see earlier. There's also human error. So sometimes ships collide with one another because they're on the same shipping routes and run into each other, causing holes and sinking. So there's many reasons that shipwrecks sink. Today, though, with our latest technology, there's a less number of shipwrecks occurring. We're able to use GPS, satellite systems, different positioning mechanisms to be able to get a better feel for the weather, for where other ships are, so we're avoiding those. But there is a graveyard of shipwrecks that lie at the seafloor from when we didn't have that technology. I can take another question.
All right, excellent. Well, Hannah, we have classrooms tuning in via YouTube, and we have a classroom of grade 4 students tuning in from London, Ontario, and they're wondering about the different kinds of animals you might find in the marine sanctuary.
That is a great question. So from some of the footage that you might have seen in the introduction package, you were looking at footage of the Portland that had sea creatures on it. So specifically within the National Marine Sanctuary and on the Portland, there are sea stars, there's sea anemones, there's haddock and cod that use these shipwrecks as their ecosystems. So taking a look at this footage here, you see various marine life like this fish. There's also some artifacts that you'll see here as well. We have this footage of some sea anemones. Lots of mussels attach themselves to shipwrecks too, so they really create a community or an entire ecosystem on the shipwreck, making it much more than just a cultural significance at the bottom of the seafloor, but also significant for its biodiversity. I can take another question. Thank you for that awesome one from London, Ontario.
All right, excellent. I do want to give a quick shout out to Mrs. Jenko's class. They're tuning in with us right now, but their microphone's not cooperating. But if you guys want to wave like crazy, they're joining us from Toronto, Ontario. So wave like crazy. There they are. All right. So send me a question via the chat sidebar. But while we wait for that, let's visit Mrs. Taylor's group. They're hanging out in Philadelphia in the United States. Some high school students. Let's get their microphone turned on. How we doing, boys and girls?
Good.
All right. Who's got a question?
Hello.
Okay, so after you study the shipwreck, what further research are you planning to explore after you get results?
Great. So I think we have connection back with the research vessel Connecticut. So I'm going to turn this back over to Ben. And the question was, after we get our results, what are the next steps in the research project and what are we looking to see next? Research next. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So we want to try and get back to the Portland as often as possible because it changes constantly, either through natural changes and degradation or through human impacts. For example, fishing sometimes impacts the historic resources out here. So we want to continue to come out here. We want to find new wrecks and explore new areas, which we'll be doing tonight with what's called multi-beam sonar. And this will allow us to detect new objects or targets on the seafloor. Some of them might be shipwrecks. And there are over 200 reported shipwrecks out here in Stellwagen Bank Sanctuary. So we have a lot of work to do. So continuing to explore over the next many years is part of what we want to do.
All right, so let's grab another question. Mrs. Jenko's class sent me some questions via the chat, and I've got a two-parter here. They're wondering what was the size of the wreck, and then they're wondering why sea life likes to make their homes on shipwrecks.
Both great questions. So turning it back over to Ben. Ben, what is the size of the shipwreck Portland, and why do marine life decide to make their homes on this wreck?
Right. So the original size of the ship was 291 feet, but in the process of degradation on the sea floor, it actually has gotten a little bit bigger because you know, parts are falling off, and you know, marine organisms like to attach to whatever surface they can. And when a hard sort of object falls out of the sky, as it were, or through the water onto the seafloor, such as this ship did in 1898, all of a sudden that's this new substrate or this new material that organisms can settle on and attach to, which is why you see so many beautiful anemones growing on the Portland, brachiopods, bryozoans, all kinds of sea life. That's one thing that Kirsten Meyer-Kaiser is studying over these 3 days. So it becomes sort of like an oasis of biological diversity, these shipwrecks.
Great. Thank you so much for that explanation, Ben. Joe, I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions, so I'll turn it over to you.
All right, let's go for it. We're going to go to Connecticut this time. Naugatuck, we have some students joining us with Mrs. DeMeo. Let me get their microphone turned on. Let's see how they're doing. Oops, there it is. How we doing, boys and girls?
Are the shipwrecks international, or are they just in the United States?
Are the ships international, or are they just ones from the United States?
Great. Thank you. Ben, the question is coming from Connecticut. And the question is, are the shipwrecks international, or are they just in the United States?
Well, hello, everybody in Connecticut. That's where I grew up in Northwest Connecticut in Colebrook, if you've ever heard of that. But we are not aware of any international shipwrecks in Stellwagen Bank Sanctuary. They all appear to be domestic or flagged in the United States. So thank you for that question.
Great. And thank you to all of the classrooms who were able to speak and ask questions, for all that typed them into the chat box as well. Thank you for exploring with us in Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary. Our ROV feed, the live feed that you are seeing from the Portland, is going to be on our website throughout the duration of this expedition. And so feel free to log on to that and check out that feed throughout the day. There are more live programs that are also going to be offered at the schedule listed below, and these you also get to interact with. You just type in your question and the expedition team will be answering those questions as well. If you're on social media and are interested in following our Sanctuaries Live hashtag, you can see some of the latest photos and videos there. We hope that you'll tune in again. So follow us on social media, check out our live feed, and thank you so much from all of us here at the National Marine Sanctuaries, Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and the Inner Space Center for exploring with us today. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.